No, thanks. Just the water's lovely, darling. Thank you so much. Yes, go. Let's hope let one of the others come. Good, darling. And more coming? More people? Good. So go on. Yes. Understand the attachment that drives the action. Yes. I understand. No, I understand. So I think what that would seem on the faces of it, but I think would seem make sensible. But I think when we start to look at the Buddhist view and understand how deep the mental habits are, that's why the body just without any thought does the job. Why we have look at the world. Okay, look at the world. The body and speech is what harms others, isn't it? The body and speech is what helps others. But what drives it's in the mind. And the body and speech have no power from their own side. But in our feeling, it's as if body and speech have immense power. But it's because we have no awareness of what's happening in our mind. It's not our culture to know what's in our mind. And even, as Lama Zopa says, most people on this planet have absolutely no idea that what does go on their mind plays any role at all, because we're so addicted to the object, addicted to the people, his fault, her fault, that's delicious, it's ugly. We just mindlessly respond with our body and speech and do things. So the one of looking at the mind is actually really advanced. So it's not as if when you start to control your hand and not put it out to the glass of alcohol, that does start with the mind. But it's not as if you're using the mind to become familiar with the attachment. You're using your mind to make determination to control the body. The mind's still involved. You've got to have a decision. That's mental. But the second level is more subtle, more sophisticated. It's the mental level of understanding and unpacking attachment itself. And that's really sophisticated. And then when we understand with humility that these habits, which is karma, are very deep. Habits are deep. And we are mostly like we have no awareness of what's happening here, so we just mindlessly, do we not? The world is like this. We feel something, so we follow it. Do you see my point? No, what stopping the action does, let's say you have a tendency to shout at your husband, if you have a husband or somebody, whoever. Some people make us crazy, right? And some people have an easy mouth. So out comes the mouth, the words. It just pours out the mouth. There's never a thought, should I or shouldn't I say it? So that means the habit to be angry in the mind is strong, but also the habit to speak your thoughts is strong. So the first one, I can see this in my life. Very volatile mind, and my mouth did exactly what my thoughts felt. I never had to hesitate for 1 second. I was thinking it and out the mouth. And then, do you understand, since a kid, no one had to teach me to say angry words. So it was completely habitual. So the really powerful one, I mean, it's already unbelievably hard, to control the speech. I mean, if you're not used to doing it, you want to explode. You think you kill somebody if you don't say the words. So it's a powerful thing to control the speech. It takes a huge effort and a huge mental determination. I'm going to control my speech. Then again, yes, and I've got to control my anger, but that's second, because the speech is just a servant. It's really profound. It doesn't mean you're not using your mind, but you're using your mind to control your body. Because that's what does the damage. And the second you don't say the words, I mean, look at what happens when you say the words. Look at the trouble that comes after. You can't take the words back, and that's what breaks most relationships. Speech is, we can spend the whole weekend talking about the power of this. It sounds so cute and boring in our culture. Oh, to control your speech sounds pathetic, but it's profound. I mean, look at just groups and families. Really, speech, just speech, not raping and killing. Just speech. It creates unbelievable problems. But part of our problem in our culture too, you don't get arrested for saying bad things. You get arrested if you stole five francs. But if you lie, you can't get arrested. So we don't pay attention to speech. We think even, I'm allowed to say what I like. It's like my right, you know. But when we realise the damage it does in relationships, in families, I mean, the number of schisms, breaks in families, just because people say bad words to each other, but even worse, bad words behind backs, that causes politics and destruction. This is, look at organisations, workplaces. They're like political war zones, groups behind backs, and because we believe everything we hear, we'll believe that story about that colleague. We're not going to question it. So just controlling the mouth is a profound practice. I always say this, and I mean, I'm not trying to show off on our family. I mean, I've got 6 siblings, and we're very volatile, all like me. Bossy, you know. Except my brother is the only one who's not. He's the 7th in the family, and he's the least bossy. And he has 6 bossy sisters. What can you do? Anyway, the point is, we had a small family, a small house. My mother had so many babies so quickly. I mean, she actually had 9 in 10 years. You know, one died. 8. And then one died, so the 7 of us left. So we're all very close in age. And we all lived together close because we had no money. We had to share beds and everything. And it was just chaos. It was just like shouting and yelling and screaming because there was no mental and physical space for these poor little volatile children. You understand? I mean, it's understandable. Actually, there's 2 things I want to say here. It's very interesting. My own experience. Wild, you know, out of control, shouting, yelling. I was mean to my sisters. I was a bully because mostly I just felt suffocated. I felt I had no space to think, no space to breathe. That's my problem. But I was always mean to everybody with my mouth, you know, and I was a bully to my sisters. And also so naughty, badly behaved. When I was about 12 or 13, I was always in love with God. But at the same time, I can't work it out, but at the same time I think I was in love with God, I was trying to love boys as well. I didn't seem to think it was a contradiction, you know, whatever. But I remember one time I was about 12, or I forget, and I was walking up, and I stole my mother's earrings and her high heels, and I had all this pink lipstick, and walking up and down our main street trying to seduce the greengrocer's son. He was 16, you know. My mother freaked out completely. So she sent me off to live at school. I was going to the Catholic convent, but she made me go live there to be a boarder, you know, the last 2 years. Well, I never studied. I never did any work at school. I was a disaster. I was always in trouble. I failed all my exams. I was totally naughty, but overnight I became a saint. Because suddenly the new condition called peace and clarity in my own room and going to mass every morning and structure and the better part of Robina came out. So that's one thing that's very interesting. You just give the right conditions and that encourages the right part of you. You give yourself the wrong conditions, that encourages the wrong part of you. Buddha's point is the alcohol's not the main problem. The attachment is. But you remove yourself from alcohol, suddenly you're different. So this is where we have a lot of caution in the first level. So for me it was amazing. I went to mass every morning. I memorised all the mass in Latin. I passed all my exams. I was well behaved because suddenly everything, the external change. That's one thing. But the other point I'm making, with my family, we grew up, we left home, we did our own lives, we'd come back to see each other. We'd always fight, always fighting as children, but loving each other. And then we'd come home for Christmas as we got older, and then we'd fight. And then people on the phones, Julie said this, and Polly said that, and Julie said that, and Mary said that, and no, she didn't, and because it's a close bond. But at some point, and we're all old now, at some point, maybe 20 years, I don't know, I can say now with certainty, we never speak bad things about each other to each other, ever. And we even rejoice, which we never used to do because you'd be jealous, you know. We even rejoice in each other's qualities. And we never talk about things we don't agree with when we're together. So we have harmony. There is literally harmony and a sweet feeling. The sweetness is always there, but then we'd fight and make a mess. But now we don't do the fighting and we don't do the bad-mouthing. So all I'm talking about is change the speech. And then so new things can flourish. And this doesn't mean be duplicitous and hide and pretend. It just means seeing the power of speech. I find it very profound, this. Now, of course, some of you don't ever say anything. You've got another problem. Do you understand? You've got another problem. You've got to learn to find an environment in which you have to speak what you know, speak things out so you know what you're thinking. Because some people don't ever speak anything. But I'm just talking the uncontrolled speech here. You get my point? So it seems simple, but it's kind of profound, you know. And I always remember one time, because I've been around this organisation for quite a few years, you know, and I'm a bit of a troublemaker. Whatever. That's my reputation. But I remember being all very self-piteous and crying to Lama one time, Lama Yeshe. I was his attendant for 8 days in London, and I was just being so full of self-pity. And then he said, all he said was, "There's nothing wrong with your heart, dear. It's just your behaviour." And it was profound for me. Because, you think, oh, I'm bad. I'm a troublemaker. But it was just so relaxed where he said, you're fine, it's just your behaviour. In other words, control your speech and it'll be okay. And it was really like a revelation for me. Do you understand? And I was past 40. I wasn't 14, I was like 40-something. So it shows it takes a while to grow up, Do you understand? Are we communicating? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. That's right. That's right. I understand. That's another problem, isn't it? So you've got the virtue, and you rejoice in it. You've got the virtue of not saying mean words to people. That's fantastic. Now you understand. There's always a good side and a bad side to everything, if you like. So the good side of not saying bad words is you don't hurt people's feelings. You're not being unkind to people. This is wonderful. But then you've got to look at another aspect, and that is, we should get into this more deeply, the motivation that propels everything we do, including saying bad or good words and including being silent. So then I joke a bit and I say we can divide us all into the good girls and the bad girls, and you sound like one of the good girls. Meaning you'd always do what Mummy said. You're a nice girl, you didn't want to upset the apple cart, you said nice things, you didn't make trouble. That's what I'm saying. Or as a kid, what? Naughty. So what happened? I mean, that's all right. But what do you mean? So you notice that you don't... So you mean, what you're telling me is now in your relationships at work and with people, you don't say bad words. Is what you're saying? No, I'm not asking you that. I'm just asking you a simple fact. In relationships, one-on-one, or groups, or families, or organisation, work, whatever, what you're saying is you have a tendency to not say bad things. What are you telling me exactly you don't say? Okay. Okay. That could be really good. But I will say this to you. No, I'll say this to you. Most of us, all right, to really, okay. Okay. Most of what motivates what we do now, whether it's not say things because you're afraid of conflict, or to say things like I would because you wanted to cause conflict, or whatever it is, do you understand? The motivation for most of us, instinctively and deep, is attachment to ourselves. So the overt one, okay. If we understand, and we've begun to look into the mind, we've got these neurotic, deluded, I-based, unhappy states of mind. We have the valid, not I-based, useful, altruistic, appropriate, other-based states of mind. And that's the key distinction that Buddha makes. In our world, we don't think of them so clearly. We just say, oh, anger's good, oh, love's good, oh, jealousy's a problem. But we sort of mix them all up in a big soup and give them equal status. Buddha's got this really clear way of describing the characteristics of the neurotic ones, which are why they cause us suffering, and the characteristics of the virtuous ones, which is why they cause us happiness and help others. So the virtuous states of mind are states of mind that are necessarily not ego-based. They're kind of more they've got bigger perspective. They're related to what's helpful for others as much as being based in some kind of virtue. So they're genuine love, in other words, is a delight that you be happy. When I see you happy, even if you're married to my ex-boyfriend, I've forgiven him, and I see you happy, I'm happy for you. That's genuine love. Do you understand? Rejoicing in someone else's good qualities. That's a virtuous quality. Having compassion is a virtuous quality. So the negative states of mind, and they don't have to, negative sounds like they're really horrible, but they can be very mild, and they're always based on I. They're fear, the I is based in fear, and they're based on attachment. So to understand the three toxic emotions, which helps us understand all of the neurotic emotions, and the key one to understand for the Buddha is attachment. And attachment is multifaceted, and we will go into it in more detail. But the deepest, most primordial attachment we all have, deep in the depths of our bones, unidentifiable initially, because it's so primordial, more than for sex, drugs, rock and roll, possessions, or anything. It's attachment to being seen as a nice girl. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to upset the apple cart, who doesn't want conflict, there's nothing wrong, it's good, there can be virtue there, but if it's based upon your own fear, and often it's based upon, because you can't handle when there's conflict, because you don't like conflict, because it makes you nervous. Your attachment, attachment only wants nice things. Attachment's this junkie, like a child in us, that can only bear pleasant things. It wants nice feelings, nice sounds, nice smells. Now, some people have more attachment to have everything nice out there, and other people, like me, have more attachment to get what I want. So I'm prepared to do anything to get what I want. So that's my attachment. If you understand my point. So even if it causes conflict, I don't mind conflict. Whereas yours, you're frustrated without getting what you want, but you were afraid to say something because people mightn't like you. That's what often is what's behind not wanting conflict. It's not coming from compassion. That's the negative side of it. But they're very subtle and they're all mixed together. It's wonderful not to have conflict. That could be coming from your genuine compassion, but often it's mixed with this attachment to not have unhappy things because you can't cope with it. And therefore you won't say the right thing because you're afraid of upsetting the apple cart. So it's quite tricky, and this demands a lot of inner awareness so we can really sort out what's happening in here. It's not that easy and obvious necessarily. Are you with me? Are you with me? Okay, so therefore you could say a good side, from my point of view of being my kind of person, if I did have integrity, I'd be prepared to stand up and make a fuss if it was the right thing to do, even if people didn't like me. That's really, you need courage to do that, and most of us don't have that. So that's what you have to learn to do. If it is the right thing, moral and valid, then you should stand up and say something and accept the consequences. But we have to practice, you know. So really the key one in all of this, and we're going to get to this when it comes to karma and everything, is understanding what motivates us and then learn to change our motivation for what we think and do and say. This is the key point from the Mahayana Buddhist point of view. And so all of this demands really intelligent inner awareness, not just a vague feeling of what our feelings are, because feelings are only the tip of the iceberg, but what informs the feelings, all the cognitive stories deep down that inform our feelings. But we only notice them when they become feelings. So that's why we've got to go deeper and start to notice the stories that inform the feelings, and that takes time. Do you understand? Yeah. Yes. Okay, anger, if you say, oh, look, she's being angry, you see a person shouting and yelling. So we can see the body doing certain things and the speech being certain things. We can deduce that there's anger in there. Yeah, that's the evidence, isn't it? So the real point is that's just their body and speech. So what is going on in here, another way to say it is what determines those actions of body and speech is their angry thoughts. That's what I mean by inform. So that's why we've got to look beyond the feelings and listen to the thoughts. And these are like 1,000. Even Western psychology says we have 1,000 thoughts a second. Buddha completely agrees. So this job of being your own therapist, as Lama Yeshe puts it, it sounds delicious, but it's the hardest job we'll ever do because it demands such integrity. And then also demands this clarity based upon Buddha's model of neurotic states and virtuous states, because they're mixed together like a big soup right now. We can't tell one bit from another. And that's the kind of clarity we have to have. Do you understand? And this really just does take time. And until we understand clearly what Buddha's saying, a negative state, a positive one is, we won't be able to do it. Because our view of what is valid is very different in the West, you know. Our models of the mind, quite different in how they interpret. Are we communicating? Yes.
You mentioned level 3 about emotions, looking at them and transforming them. I missed kind of level 4. What did you mention there? The next level?
I'm a bit confused.
You mentioned that level 3 is looking at emotions and transforming them, or accepting them, whatever. Then you mentioned level 4, the next level.
Oh, no, that was another way. The levels I was talking about, that's more to do with the first level of practice is controlling your body and speech. Yeah. That's like junior school. Yeah. The next level is controlling your mind, which is high school. And that's, we can refer to the wisdom wing and the compassion wing, all the Buddhist path. And that's the wisdom wing, and that's Hinayana Buddhism. Have you heard the Buddhist teachings before? No, it doesn't matter. This is mainly concerned with yourself. You work on your body and speech, control your body, control your speech, and now you have to go to learn to do a bit of meditation, and now you learn to unpack and unravel the contents, learning to deal with what's your mind. That's high school work, and that's the real job of being a Buddhist, really becoming your own therapist. So then I meant in terms of levels, then you go to the compassion wing, which is the next level. It's like university level. Now you help others. Do you see what I'm saying? But this is mainly for oneself, controlling your body and speech, and that in Buddhist terms is learning to understand the meaning of karma. We'll go into this. And then in the second one, where you learn to get some meditation, a bit of concentration, and you start, Lama Yeshe puts it, to be your own therapist. And that means just to unpack and unravel what I'm saying here, the stories in here that we don't even notice, because we only notice when it comes fully grown feeling with the body and the shouting and the yelling or the depression. And that's the big, big point that we have to look at. We only notice feelings. You notice the person shouting, go, oh, they're angry. But they might have been sitting there quietly for 5 minutes before that. We wouldn't see that they were angry, but their thoughts were building up to a point of utter rage. And indeed, there are many people who have enraged mind but don't ever shout. You remember this, one of the recent crazy multi-murderers in America? The guy who killed all those people at that big concert in Las Vegas. And all the research they did in his computer, on all the websites he went to, all his materials, all his possessions, his family, there was zero evidence of any anger, any distress, any disturbance, any weirdness. Nobody could believe that he could do such a monstrous thing. There was no evidence in anything that he even had angry thoughts. But so it must have been so deep in him that he never even expressed it. All these unfortunate kid killers, they just look at their websites, they see these wacky things and their crazy thoughts and their Facebook pages. It's evident, you know. So the tip of the iceberg for the Buddha is what we show with our body and speech. So if you are let's go back to these 3 toxic emotions. This is what we have to really understand. 84,000 neurotic states of mind, 84,000 mental illnesses, which we can remove from the mind eventually. The 3, they come down to the 3. And the 3, there's like a hierarchical relationship between them. And this is not, again, how we think in modern psychology. This is so tasty. The root affliction, another word they use for these is delusion. The root negative state of mind, the root mental illness, whatever words you want, these are all synonyms, is simply called ignorance. But this is the most primordial, the deepest mistake our mind makes, that Buddha says is the final one that has to be removed in order to achieve liberation from suffering. That is the most subtle, and the way colloquially to talk about this one, this ignorance, ma rigpa in Tibetan, unawareness, it's known colloquially as ego grasping. All these unhappy states of mind have this particular characteristic of intense grasping. Frantic, concrete grasping. Well, this one is this powerful, deeply held, wrong conception of a concrete, solid, separate, lonely me. So deeply ingrained, we don't even notice it. We don't even have an equivalent term for it in modern psychology. It's so primordial. On the basis of that, its main voice is attachment. And this is an intense, unbelievable, it's got a grasping. They're all grasping. And it's got this whole spectrum of qualities. The deepest level of attachment, and we're born with this, and we all recognize this, is this deep, deep feeling of dissatisfaction. I haven't got enough. I am not enough. Whatever I get is not enough. Whatever I achieve is not enough. Whatever I do is not enough. However much you tell me you love me, it's not enough. However much weight I lose, it's not enough. However much I change the shape of my nose, it's not enough. However much I do this. It's like a bottomless pit of dissatisfaction. This is the main disease of attachment, Buddha says, from countless lives of practicing it. And this is just like this gaping hole in there, and we believe it totally. So naturally, the next level of this deep feeling of dissatisfaction is this emotional hunger for something we think is missing. It's obvious. So what's missing is stuff out there. We dump it on stuff out there. Cakes, handbags, people, jobs, events, shapes, sounds, colours. And that's our main job throughout life. Attachment's job, this junkie, to find objects, things and events and sounds and smells and then get them and then believe that when I get them, it'll fill up the gaping hole and I'll get satisfied or happy. Well, attachment's a liar. It's not true. It's not valid. It's completely invalid. It's it's based on a complete misconception, Buddha says. And the next function of this attachment is like a spectrum. What it does, this hunger, this emotional hunger, then when it finds the object that it wants, like the shape, like the boy, and it makes the boy look way more delicious than he really is. And then attachment has a story, an expectation of so much more happiness and perfection that boy will bring me because it's his job. So there's massive expectation, and then massive possessiveness, that is mine, etc., etc., etc. And it's all a series of lies, Buddha says. And these are anciently held, primordially deep misconceptions in the bones of our being from countless lives of practicing. And of course, because they're so primordial, we don't question those assumptions. We don't even look at those assumptions. We believe in the feeling, and the feeling is so strong. So we just keep following, following it. That's attachment. Now, another way of putting it bluntly, what attachment is, in essence, is a junkie in us that is hungry, and always wanting something more, never satisfied. And what it wants is the nice things. It can only bear the nice things. And the second it doesn't get what it wants, and that could be the handbag, the boy, the smell, the taste, the praise, you name it. It gives rise to the third of these three toxic emotions, and that's called aversion. So there's attachment, hungry, looking for a delicious thing, and the millisecond it doesn't get it, panic attack, aversion. Now, there's again a whole spectrum of aversion. The most volatile aspect of it is anger, shout, yell, scream. That we're all familiar with. That's called anger. There's a milder versions of aversion: irritation, annoyance, upset, frustrated, anxious, worried. They're all they're versions of aversion, versions of anger, but mild. And we never think they're a problem. You don't go to your therapist, I got annoyed today. Well, shut up and go home. I want to kill my husband today. Yeah, now they'll listen. But it's just that one is a stronger aspect of the same state of mind. So in general, anger, aversion, is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. And this is happening 1,000 times a day, deeply, instinctively, all the time. But until it's violent, we don't notice. With aversion, I haven't finished. You've got anger, annoyed, irritated, frustrated, and then you've got internalized guilt, depression, despair. They're all aspects of anger, and they're all the response to an attachment doesn't get what it wants. It's this primordial junkie in us that can only bear the nice things. Even more brutal, attachment only wants what I want. So attachment and aversion, these cute words which seem like laughable in Western psychology, are the story of the suffering of all sentient beings. Are we communicating? So we only notice when you want to kill yourself or when you kill someone else. That's the grossest level of anger. We only notice when you want to jump on 20 girls a day or, eat 20 cakes a day. That's only the grossest level of attachment. These states of mind go to really subtle, more nuanced levels. And that's the work that is demanded to go more deep and deep and deep into our mind, unpacking and unraveling the levels and levels and levels of these states of mind. That's being a Buddhist. This is being a Buddhist. This is the job of being your own therapist. Are we communicating here? So who was talking to me just recently? You. Okay. So I'm trying to go deeper into that explanation. So what was your point again?
I didn't get what level 4 is.
Okay, so forget that's a different model. Okay, so now what I'm getting at here, though, as I'm saying, when we start to go more deeply into the mind, we're going to see we've got grosser levels of the emotional level is the tip of the iceberg when you express it through your body and mouth. Or when you can't wake up in the morning and you're depressed in bed, you're inert. That's the physical expression of internalized aversion, which is for you depression. If you want to kill your girlfriend, that's the expression with your body and speech of externalized anger. In either way, they're the same response, and attachment is beneath both of them. And attachment's the junkie that runs us all day. But this is so subtle, we never think like this. This constant, think of it in simple words. We always want to get the nice things, don't we? We always want to get nice things, right? If you have, what's your name? Sasha, let's say all day. Sasha, how are you, darling? Oh, I had a wonderful day. What happened? And you'll proceed to tell me that you basically got what you wanted all day. The nice weather, the nice smell, the nice cake, the nice boss, the nice girl for the car worked well, and someone smiled at you. So that's what we mean by happiness, right? Well, that's because your attachment got what he wanted. I'm not trying to be mean. That's how we all are. And he had a bad day, it's the exact opposite. This is the life. So the Buddha's view is, our view in the West is, it's valid to be happy because you got nice things. Because we believe happiness comes from getting nice things. And it's valid to be miserable if you didn't get nice things. But the Buddha's view is, no, you got it wrong. That's fine to have nice things, but the cause of your happiness is your own virtue for a start, and the source of it is because your attachment got what you wanted. So it's like you're the junkie who got the fix. And you're miserable if you didn't get the fix. So when we understand attachment, it pervades even our good things. And it's like the poison that destroys us, Buddha says. And it's really subtle to see the difference.
I think for me, in the current stage of my life, it's the difficulty to find out why I think I'm not enough.
You don't have to worry about that. No, I understand. But the Buddha would say that's the deepest delusion we've all got, and it's the manifestation of attachment. And it's not because anyone taught you. It's not because you did something wrong when you were a little boy. You were born with it. And the Buddha says you're born. So, okay, it's like you're asking, I've got to try and work out why I can't play football properly. Well, first you've got to just do a bit of analysis. Maybe you've got one leg that's too short. Maybe you've got only 3 toes. You understand, maybe you've got one blind eye. Who knows what the problem is? But more than anything, a very simple one to say is if all the right conditions are there, it's because you've learned it wrongly. You've been playing it, you've been taught wrongly, and you're playing it wrongly. That's how come you can't play football properly. You have the habit to play it wrongly. Do you understand? That's very simple. So the habit of attachment is always believing that out there, when I get that, I'll get happy. But what it does is, like being a junkie, you know, if you're a junkie, the more you get heroin, what's the long-term result? No, in a simple sense related to attachment. It doesn't make you less. It doesn't make you less hungry for heroin, does it? It makes you more hungry, doesn't it? So the more you get what you want, you don't get satisfaction. You get more dissatisfaction. So why you're always dissatisfied is because you keep believing that if you get this, you'll get satisfied. But it just brings more dissatisfaction. That's the answer. It's internal, and we've all got it. That's the common disease of all beings. So the Buddhist approach is then you learn to look at attachment, which is always hungry for more. So one of the simplest ways to say practicing, there's lots of things, and the whole Buddhist practice is based on this. One of the ways, which sounds so simple, is learn to be satisfied. And how do you do that? Well, if we realize that not satisfied is a deep instinctive thought deep down that we believe instinctively, we have to argue with it. Well, Sasha, I'm doing a pretty good job. Just you tick the boxes. Are you a reasonably good guy? You don't kill, lie, steal, cheat on people, rape people. Not anymore. In general, you've got ethics. You've got good ethics, right? And that means something to you. That's important. Okay, that's pretty stunning. I think if you did a bit of research, you're probably 1% of the planet. That's not being mean. So you should be blissed out with satisfaction for yourself. But we're all like this. If you wrote down all your good qualities, you got a job, you earn some money, you got relationships with people, you're kind of nice to them, you got enough money in the bank, you got some skills. My goodness. No, I'm not being sarcastic here, Sasha, but you're sort of hearing my point. If you ticked the boxes of this of another person and saw what they had on paper, nice relationships, good job, this, and then, you'd be, well, that's very nice, that person's doing a good job.
It's understandable on the mind level, but on the subtle level, on the feeling level, that's hard to get there.
No, but that's my point. But I'm explaining why, because you've practiced it before. So if you've practiced wrong football for 20 years, it takes a while to change habits, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Yeah. Well, you've been practicing attachment for 22,000 lives, Buddha says, and which means you keep believing when I get this, I'll get happy. But we've got to start, so then once you know it intellectually, you've got to start with the intellect. You've got to start with knowing the new methods of playing football, then you have to train yourself to play the new way. So you start with learning to simply say to yourself at a gross level, I am doing well. I am doing this. And rejoicing. But we never do. We never do this. We never like to rejoice in our good qualities. This is a powerful way to lessen the feelings of dissatisfaction. Okay, it takes time. But when you know it's a deep habit, you won't get depressed about it. Do you understand my point? This is very much part of it, you know? What else, people? Yes, go. Mm. Yes. I understand. Exactly. School, boarding school. Now that's a really important point, you know. Well, first of all, I say usually in my family, my mother and father was just how the situation was. A very volatile group, 9 human beings, crazy father, problems, dramas, and 7 little human beings all trying to sort of survive in this, you know. So if my mother had any common sense, because when you're involved in this, she was overwhelmed by the suffering, and she couldn't see. I think most people, we can't see that how to take care of the kids. What am I going to do with all the children? They're always fighting. Well, the simple one is you separate them. But most of us don't have the common sense to think that. It really seems so simple. And it's the same with ourselves. You're at work every day and you're fighting. You can't stand that colleague. You can't stand that boss. So we just go back like an idiot, never questioning the fundamental thing itself. Should I change something here? But because when we've got lows, we mostly have, when we're always dissatisfied, and then when we always believe something else is the problem, we don't notice what will be the best for ourselves. We have no intelligence, we have no self-respect. So let's just think in a relationship with a person. So you've got I don't know, what do you like, boys, girls, dogs? People are very flexible these days. You like boys, okay. So you have a boy, and you're an ordinary victim person, which is typical samsaric. I'm hopeless, I'm no good, mummy made me, it's not my fault, I didn't ask to get born, and he's the cause of all my happiness, and he must do what I want. And you understand, I get jealous when he doesn't, I get angry with the typical, no awareness. Nice girl, you're a nice girl, it's true, but all this typical victim mentality. Well, the usual mode there is, you get into the relationship, you're all idealistic, it's all going to be perfect, he's going to make me happy. And then suddenly he leaves the toilet seat down and he farts in the sheet, or puts it up, farts in the sheet instead of the toilet, doesn't come home on time, doesn't look at you with such divine love anymore. Of course, you're going to get so upset and you get jealous, you get angry, he doesn't love me anymore, boo-hoo, right? Normal, ordinary life, typical. Now you start to hear that Buddha says it's about your own mind. Wow, it's a brand new idea. You'll think, I'm going to start looking at this. So now you start to realize that your mind is playing a role in this. He does his trip, you've got your trip. So you start to become conscious. So you start to notice, well, I'm always shooting my mouth off and saying, you don't love me anymore, and blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'm driving him away, so maybe I've got to shut my mouth first, like I just said before. And you're still in the relationship. But let's say you notice him looking at other girls, and then you hear he's cheating on you. It's getting a bit serious now. Now, the normal victim one would go back like a moth to a flame, would shout and yell, would blame him, boo-hoo, you don't love me, it's not fair. And look, you kill each other, or you kill him, or you kill yourself, isn't it? That's typical. So now this is the point. It's your question. When you're beginning to get some self-awareness, you've got to now stop and take stock of the whole situation. And the first thing, and this is the point, you have got to decide is this relationship worth it? This could be your job. Is this job worth it? Is there something in this job that is useful to me that can help me grow, become a better this, better that? Is there something here that's worth it? So if you decide there is something between me and this boy, there is something worth it there, and I'm prepared to give it a go, that becomes your decision. You choose to stay, and now your main practice is changing your mind. And now you begin to become a grown-up. Now, if it is like the alcohol, it's too much, his violence is too much and you can't cope with it, or his bad behaviour is too much and you can't cope, you don't blame him, but you say, no, I can't handle this, I'm leaving. But most of us wait till we're killed or kill someone else. We don't make... So it's making the decision to stay and work on your mind, or making the decision to go. That has to be, that's the key point, that's the point. That's why I have such respect for my friends in prison. They don't have the luxury to leave. Do you understand? They don't have the luxury. So they either go mad or they change their mind. So they change their mind. They start seeing the good things. They start accepting this is my... And this is the point. Even if you're in prison wrongly, you can choose, I am in prison. This is my reality. That's powerful. And that's the opposite to victim. This is huge, that takes real courage. Now you're in charge of your life, and you decide. Do you understand? Good. And this is the toughest one. Because attachment and aversion are addicted to the external object. Blame and guilt and all that nonsense, This is being grown up.
So in the best situation, you would always accept where you stand.
Any given moment where you are is where you are. So you've got no choice.
Yeah, but I mean, even if I could change, for example, I live in Berlin and I'm not happy in Berlin.
Nothing wrong. No, that's what I'm saying before. There's nothing wrong with change. No, I did not say accept it every time. You didn't hear me. Yeah. If it is not right in that relationship or being in Berlin, you can decide to stay, like if you were in prison. But if you are able to change it and you feel there's some other opportunity, don't even hesitate, but leave for the right reason. Not just boredom, I want something delicious and new, that's attachment. But really, if there's another, Buddha says, hey, change something, please change it. Nothing moral that says you can't change something. But if you can't, but when you're, like, say, you want to leave Berlin because you're bored, you're fed up, you're sick of this job, that's just attachment, darling. That's the wrong reason to leave Berlin. Then maybe you can leave Berlin for the right reason, or you can stay in Berlin a bit to work on your mind. Either way, to make yourself happy. But there's no law that says you've got to stay there. I mean, the karma runs out in places, and karma. That's why in the Buddhist one, the Christian one is very deep about relationships. You've got, it's a sin to ever get divorced, and so people sit around in miserable relationships for the rest of their lives. There's no concept like that. Karma runs out, So maybe your karma's finished with Berlin, and don't hesitate. And you get a new place, you'll soon learn whether it's just attachment, No, nothing says you have to stick there. Nothing at all. Don't worry about it. There's no moral in that.
Yeah.
You understand?
Was just the name of just an example of like general, because we're not a prison. I think we always can, or we always feel that we can decide everything. This is what I mean.
We think we feel we can, but the irony is we might as well be in prison because actually we don't. We feel we're paralyzed. I know someone says, and they go and they come and a person comes to see me and the job's hopeless, the boss is a disaster, the colleagues hate me, it's just terrible, I don't get enough money. And the first thing I said, well, you could leave and get another job. Oh, no! Give all the reasons why it's not possible. So you can't have it both ways. We can't have it both ways. Or with a relationship, he's mean, he doesn't love me anymore, he shits in the sheets, he does this, he looks at the other girls. Well, you could leave him. Oh, no, he really does love me. Oh, no, they might. Oh, no, the children will be upset. Oh, no, mummy will criticise me. Oh, no. We make up ego's reasons. And so then in either case we become victims, we're paralysed and we blame the external. That's the suffering. And the external might be horrible, but we still blame it, meaning we're not got any self-respect and any kind of courage to make a decision. Whatever it is, if you make a decision, this is where I am. Like I always use the example of this woman in prison. She's an outrageous example. Years ago, this hippie woman in the 70s hitching with a hippie husband, hippie kids, picked up in Florida by two fellows. They're stopped by the cops. The fellows kill the cops and blame the hippies. Now, they're completely innocent hippies. You can't get more innocent. They lose the kids. They're on death row in Florida for killing cops, like the worst animals on the planet, He even gets executed. I mean, can you conceive of that? He gets executed. So I've read many stories of people out of their brains with rage and despair, wrongly accused, But she did yoga and things. I read a bit of a memoir. I've heard about her since. She's out now. She had this very sort of sweet personality, didn't have much anger, but had this incredible ability. So she said, at some point, I realised I couldn't change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. So I decided, I'm not a prisoner. I'm a monk. I'm not in a cell. I'm in a cave. So she literally relabeled her situation. That's possible. That's profound, beyond profound. But what's interesting, she didn't stop trying to get her freedom. She didn't just sit back going, oh, well, I'm in prison. She never gave up working on getting free, and she got free eventually. So accepting your situation sounds to us like passivity, and the only option for us is to shout and yell. No, accepting means this is reality. Now what can I do about it? Because if you're out of your brain, you can do nothing about it. It's very courageous, very powerful, and very logical. Do you understand? And that's why Dalai Lama is the perfect example of all this. I mean, he hasn't changed, he hasn't stopped for 60 years trying to change it. Never gives up. Diplomatically, socially, politically, religiously, every way possible, he never gives up. But he's a happy guy. Funny, cracking jokes about the Chinese and the communists and everything, So somehow, he's like the proof of the pudding here, you understand? This is the hugest job we'll ever do. This is the hardest job we'll ever do. But this is the essence of being a Buddhist. And of course, I always say that Buddha doesn't own this stuff. He didn't make this up. He's not a creator. He's just intelligent, and he's observed it and used it, and he's really skillful at this. This is his expertise. Do you understand? What else, people? Time for lunch soon. No other questions? Okay. Well, okay. Let's summarise somehow. We'll move into karma a bit. We've touched on the bigger picture, broad view. So here we're mainly looking at junior school and high school, which is the wisdom wing, using another analogy. What bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. Compassion is the compassion wing, bodhisattva. It includes Vajrayana. Here we've got controlling your body and speech, or another way of putting it, using Buddhist terminology, abiding by the laws of karma. And then second, based upon the delusions in the mind and the virtues. So the second level of practice is being your own therapist, based on some meditation, getting some concentration, understanding the Buddhist model, and unpacking and unraveling the stuff beneath the emotions, the conceptual stories that determine our feelings, determine our actions. That's what I meant by inform our feelings, inform our actions. So let's look briefly then at this business of karma, this word, so well known, but so cliche. Again, this is a philosophical view of the universe. It's vast, and the literature is vast. And it came up well to the observation of these Hindus well before the Buddha. But when Buddha came along 2,500 years ago, he came through this amazing system, highly educated, went as far as he went as a philosopher and a great practitioner in meditation. He got as far as he could go, and then he diverged in his own direction, in particular in relation to the nature of self and the nature of the universe and his own ways of describing things, how the world exists and karma and suffering and happiness and so on, okay? So anyway, karma in general is Sanskrit, and it means action. So what Buddha is saying is basically every millisecond of what our body and what we do with our body and speech and mind is an action, and there are like 1,000 a second, an action. And every one of them leaves an impression or a seed in our consciousness, or programs our consciousness, cultivates that seed which brings a habit in our consciousness. And everything we think and do and say, nothing of it goes astray. It's all stored there. It's all stored there. So, okay, the main action, the starting point of the process of quote-unquote creating karma, quote-unquote sowing seeds in the mind, the starting point of this process of programming our mind is the mind itself, the thought, and in fact the word intention. Not, oh, she had a good intention, but literally bare bones, I will, volition. That's the start of the entire process. So I will walk out that door. You can deduce, if you see me stand up and head towards that door on my legs, you can deduce logically that there must have been in my mind an intention. I will walk out the door. My legs do the job. My eyes lead the way, but they're just the servants of the thought. I will walk out the door. This is the way the entire universe exists, and this is the starting point of anything we ever do or think, whether it's labelled negative or positive. And this is the process called creating karma, all of which sows seeds, which produces, these seeds will not fall away, they will eventually ripen in the future as our experiences. This is the nature of the universe, Buddha says. As the Dalai Lama says, it's like self-creation. We don't need an external creator. We don't need an external boss who punishes and rewards. That's dualistic for the Buddha. It's completely unnecessary. This is a natural law, and every sentient being, every dog, every monkey, every ant, every spirit, every hell being, every god, every human lives within this natural law. It runs the universe, but no one runs it. It doesn't need. So what we have to do is then unpack this law, understand some of the basic principles of it, so we can use it to cultivate this person. Just like you have to learn botany so you can cultivate the garden you want. So our life is our garden, and what's in it is planted by us in the past. And our own intentional actions, followed through by verbal and physical actions, are the players in this process of sowing seeds, of creating karma, of creating our lives. We are literally the creators of our own reality, life after life after life. This is Buddha's view, and all the vast literature deals with this, explains it in depth. We're our own boss. We're the creator. We're in charge. Okay, let's look at the basic principles of this. Then at the very beginning, using body and speech, don't worry about the mind yet. Buddha's very first entry-level junior school he gives us a series of little suggestions. Remember, he's not a creator, but he's like a doctor, a kind mentor, who from his experience has found certain behaviours will cause you suffering. So then on the basis of this, your doctor says, well, don't smoke, don't eat too much sugar, don't do this, don't do that. Buddha's the same. He would suggest that we list a little checklist of 10 don'ts as a recommended starting point for practice, as a basis, indeed, for one's practice all the way to enlightenment. So there are 3 actions of the body he would recommend we refrain from. Don't kill any sentient being. Don't steal. Don't take the ungiven. as Lama Zopa translates Tibetan. And the third one is called don't, cheat on partners. Don't jump on the wrong partner. Don't rape. Don't take someone else's partner. Don't cheat on yours. Basically, don't use your body based on sexual attachment to harm others. 3 simple actions. These are the heaviest of the harmful actions that are related to harming others. The second 4 are the speech, which of course mostly humans. Don't lie. Don't say bad things about people behind their backs. Don't just rabbit on about nothing, saying meaningless rubbish, boring people. Isn't it? Which is mostly what we do. And then don't use harsh words. Don't abuse people. It's 4 simple pieces of advice. The last 3 are like the beginnings of working on the mind, beginning to refrain from the 3 main delusions. We'll go into that later. But body and speech is very simple. So this is Buddha's most urgent level. As Lama Zopa says, this, if you want to start practice, and this is sort of odd to us because we think practice means sitting on the ground with your eyes closed, looking holy, meditating. Yeah, sure, do that. But this is the first one, the main one, the most dynamic. Back off, he says, and refrain from these 7. Already, I can't describe to you, like I said before about speech, but this is indescribable. It seems so boring. It seems like, oh, I want to be a Buddhist. This sounds like what my grandmother would tell me. But it's profound. But the reason is you've got to ask why. Now, this is a big point. Our view of morality in our world, whether you're a Christian or a materialist, is when someone says, don't do that. It's the policeman. It's mummy. It's God. And what their meaning is, if you do it, I'll punish you. That's our view of morality. It's very simplistic. It's very dualistic, but that's our view of morality. Well, then you naturally be thinking, don't you tell me what to do. I can do what I like, we'll say. Isn't it? That's our view of morality, because I'm going to get punished. It's very dualistic, and that's got nothing to do with Buddha's view. Buddha's like your doctor. She says, oh, Robina, darling, you've really got to give up that sugar. You're going to get diabetes, darling. You don't say, how dare you tell me what to do? And you do not say, you mean you're going to punish me if I eat sugar and give me diabetes? You don't say that either. So we know we don't have that view when it comes to health. We appreciate the doctor. We thank her for her kindness, that she's using her own experience and pointing out to you out of her kindness, honey, if you do that, you're going to really suffer. So we're grateful for her kindness. And then equally, you don't go home and you notice your doctor's not there, so out come the cakes. Oh, I won't get diabetes. She doesn't see me eat. Do you know my point? That's our view of morality. So instinctive. It's blame and punishment, which implies a person above us running the show. And that's why we have guilt. That's dualistic. It's meaningless for the Buddha. So for the Buddha, don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. Okay, I always quote this every time. Our view of morality, and I asked my Catholic priest friend, what is it that defines a sin for a Catholic? Doing what God said not to do. It completely fits if you have the view there is a creator who runs the universe and who is your boss. I'm not being mean or sarcastic. This is fact. Then of course you do his wishes and you are happy not to do what he said not to do. But then of course he will reward you for this. And this is reasonable, nothing wrong, but it's not Buddha's view. Ask Buddha, why shouldn't I kill Buddha? He does not say, because I say so. Mummy will say that. Mummy's the same as God, because I say so. Meaning you'll get punished if you do it wrong. But not here. Buddha is not a creator. He is not a punisher. He is not a rewarder. It is not his job. Like the doctor is not a punisher, is not a rewarder. It's a huge point that we have to think about. So why does Buddha exhort us not to kill? The definition of killing is the same as Jesus, but the reason why, 2 things. First, in general, for Jesus, killing is wrong, as God said. In fact, the priest said that is the main component. There is the natural law component, he said, that people don't like getting killed. But the real energy behind why it's wrong is because God said not to do it. And I'm not criticizing. The Buddha says it's natural law. Check it out. Do research, he says, in this room. In 1 minute, we can deduce that no one likes being killed. Look at the dog. Look at the ant. You can tell by their behavior. They don't like getting killed. Really reasonable. It's natural law. It is not Buddha's law. You could say there's Buddha's laws in a conventional sense, like if you live in a monastery, there are rules you abide by. You could argue they're Buddha's laws. You know, the monks don't sleep with the nuns, and I mean, you understand, whatever, I'm joking. You understand my point. But the fundamentals of what are called sins in God's, in religious view, they're just natural law for the Buddha. Harming others is a natural law. Nobody likes getting harmed. That's the first thing. But the second point is really crucial, and this takes us a long time to get in touch with. The reason behind Buddha's exhorting us in the very first stage, entry-level junior school grade 1 practice, to not kill, steal, etc., etc., is because, you know what, Robina, honey? You doing that action sows a seed in your mind that will ripen in the future as you suffering as a result of that experience. So it's for your own sake. Just like the doctor. Just like the doctor. You'll get diabetes. So the basis of this level of practice is self-respect, not guilt, not neurotic, not hiding, not wanting to not get punished. That's just dualistic. But we've got to cultivate this view. When we have it sincerely, it means then the view of karma is so intelligent. It's like mental health. Who would want to have future suffering? But this is where it's hard for us. We can hear about diabetes 20 years later being the result of sugar. We can hear about cancer in the lungs as a result of smoking. But to think that a future rebirth in a suffering lower realm or being killed by someone else in another life is the result of what you did in a past life, that's a bit abstract for us. Of course, we have taken it as a hypothesis, but that's the point we're talking here. Long term. But even short term. Okay, so let's look then at Buddha's view about the 4 main ways that our present actions will ripen in the future. 4 main ways. We're talking future lives. But you'll even see there's lots of these can happen in this present life. So the 4 main ways, if you look at your life now, you're going to divide our life into 4 kind of compartments or categories. The first one, the very first one, the result of the main negative action or positive action, in our case a positive action, is that our mind, when it died in the past life, not more than a few weeks before our mind found its way to our present mummy's fallopian tube, where it met our daddy's sperm, before we stopped breathing in the past life, a very strong virtuous karmic seed from our intentional non-killing practice in the past, millions of those seeds in that particular bank vault. One of those was triggered, which already that second, before we even stopped breathing, triggered that seed, which already programmed us to go to our present mummy's human womb a few weeks later, already determined by us. Second, at that same time was also triggered all the karmic seeds in the second category, the second compartment of our lives. If you look into your mind, you've got lots of tendencies. Good ones and bad ones. You lie, you get lazy, you kill, you steal, you're loving, you're generous, you're intelligent, you play good music. We've got a whole bunch of tendencies, our personality traits. So, of course, the commonest interpretation of this, if we're a materialist, is we got them from mummy and her genes and things like that. Well, you didn't, Buddha said. You got them from yourself, babe. They're a bunch of your habits. They were triggered from your own past habit of doing and saying and thinking those things in many different lifetimes. And those bank vaults will trigger those particular seeds that then will cause you to have that personality when you find your way to your mummy's womb. All our tendencies, in other words, to be good at music or good at killing, are already triggered well and truly before we came to our mother's egg and sperm. They're our own tendencies, our own habits. The third little bank vault seeds that are triggered were then the ones that will then produce in this life, and have a look at it now, the next level of our lives is all the way we are seen and treated by others. We've got our body, human, fruit of our past actions. All our tendencies, fruit of our past actions. And now we're very social beings. We get born in a mother's womb. We have a father. We have siblings, aunties, uncles, next door neighbours, people at school, in the neighbourhood. We have, up until now in our life, we've made contact with lots and lots and lots of sentient beings. Animals, humans, insects. And the way they see us and treat us, that is the fruit of actions like that to them in the past. So the first one's called the fully ripened result, our type of rebirth. The second is our tendencies or our habits, similar to the cause, having done them before. The third is the experiences, similar to the cause, of having done them before, but such that now they happen back to me. So karma is really personal, because we're social beings. We're always interacting with each other, always doing things to each other, hurting each other, being kind to each other, and our next life we get the results of that, or in many lives. Now extend your life out further and you will see we live in an environment. We're not just floating around in the sky, are we? We have houses and earth and sky and stars and moons and flowers and food and weather. And some environments are ugly, some are beautiful, some are clean, like Zurich, you know. Don't just take it for granted. It's the fruit of actions that cause the environment to impact you in a certain way. So basically Buddha's saying all the very way your environment impacts upon you, harmfully or well, the fruit of your past actions. The way that sentient beings see you, treat you, harm you, love you, whatever, is the fruit of your past actions. All your own tendencies, what you think and feel and what you want to do and say and everything else, all your own past actions. And your own humanity, the result of your past actions. So knowing, taking this as your view, the law of karma, then it is utterly logical that of course I wouldn't want to kill, lie, steal. Why? I don't want that future suffering. Thank you very much. Just like you would not want to smoke because you don't want cancer. The same logic. That's the basis of understanding karma. And that's the basis, junior school, entry level, grade 1 Buddhist practice. And it's for one's own sake. So to get this logic clear, you know, it's not an easy hypothesis to have. So rather than not killing because Buddha said, that's just childish. It's not the point. It's because I don't want future suffering. You don't just not smoke because your doctor said, because you have faith in her wisdom that says it could cause cancer. So here we've got to have some confidence, and then slowly we take it as a hypothesis, and then gradually as we progress spiritually, we will get to understand the logic of this, and we'll experience the truth of it for ourselves. That's the essence of karma. Any questions before we have lunch? Go, Sasha.
Just doing a list of kind of my positive habits.
Yes.
But then it's still attached to the I, to the ego, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but that's more advanced. So given that we've got ego right now, we still do have virtuous qualities, so we should own them and look at them. And as we get more advanced, we can get rid of the root of the deeper delusion later. So one step at a time. It's really important. Do you understand? So this view of karma, then of course it refers to all the good things as well. But you know what I find fascinating all over the world, in every country, from every human being's mouth? We all talk about only the bad things. And we only think of karma as when bad things happen. It's very curious. So in other words, I've never had a person say, you mean that beautiful little girl with a beautiful mother and a beautiful father and kind siblings and a lovely house and food in the fridge and a good education and money in the bank and wonderful vacations and lovely environment, you mean she deserves it? Do you hear me? Do you even hear? Some of you don't even hear what I'm saying? Tell me honestly, do you even hear what I mean? You're being too embarrassed to say something. No. Did you hear what I mean? The point of what I just said. What's the point? Why did I say it like that? Huh? You.
That we could actually see all the good fortune that we...
No, I know, but what I'm getting, the point I'm making when I said that, you didn't get. What I'm getting at is, if you hear about a little girl who has a mean father who abuses her and lives in an ugly house and has no money in the bank and the children at school are mean to her and lives in an ugly environment, we hear karma and people say, oh, you mean she deserves that? That's what everyone says. So what I said is no one ever asked the opposite question about good conditions, because we only think of karma when bad things happen. That's my point. Are you hearing me now? Are you sure? Yes. Good. We only think of the bad things, and this is it's like the bizarre irony of ego, that we run like a magnet to the misery, you know. Because if we thought even for one day, like your point, Sasha, it's really profound, you know. If you look at your life and you see that you've got these good qualities and good things, you've got tendencies, good tendencies, then you should be really very, very, very happy with yourself. Because it's a fact. When you look at the world and people killing and raping and stealing and going crazy on the streets with drugs because their minds are so overwhelmed with suffering, not criticizing, then you'll compare, wow, I must be so fortunate. I must have practiced some ethics in the past. How amazing. I should rejoice in this and keep practicing. And then when you can rejoice in your good qualities, it's easy to own your rubbish ones. But if we only bash ourselves for our bad qualities, we break our backs and it's too depressing, And that's what we all do to ourselves. It's kind of ironic. Do you understand? So let's just look at some of the results. So, for example, the 4 results, for example, of merely the most powerful action of conscious, intentional, non-killing, okay? Which would have been practiced in the context of keeping vows of morality, and I'll talk about this after lunch. It's really potent. The karmic result of strong, intentional, non-killing. 1, a human life as opposed to a dog's life. 2, you'll wake up in this life with no thought to kill. You'll be like that little friend of mine, I always quote this story, he's sitting there, 3 years old, his mummy is taking the lice out of his head, and he's crying with compassion for the lice. Mummy, mummy, leave them alone, it's their home, don't hurt them. And since he's 40-something now and has never killed a living being, that for the Buddha is the logical deduction. He's lived in the vows of not killing, such that he wakes up in this life with the residual result of non-killing, no thought to kill. And you look at the planet, most people kill something. Even most religions say it's okay to kill creatures. I'm not criticizing. So it's like a miracle to not want to kill. It's incredible, amazing. The third one, the experience similar to the cause of non-killing, and we've all got that one so far, is you don't get killed and you don't die young. Well, so far so good. We're still here, aren't we? So our non-killing karma from the experience point of view, petrol tank hasn't run out yet. So be very happy. And the fourth one, environmental karmic result of non-killing. Clearly you've got it in Zurich in general, maybe individuals haven't. That the food nourishes you, the air is relatively unpolluted, the water is pure and clean. That's the direct result of your collective karma, each of you, of non-killing in the past. Every action has any of these 4 results, good or bad. So literally Buddha is saying we are the creators of our own reality. It's kind of a powerful view. Shocking, actually. I've got to get used to it, think it through, The point, too, I've found, certainly becoming from being a Catholic or a communist, all those things, always blaming everybody else for everything. Now this one, for me, the really powerful implication of taking the view of karma is the one of accountability. I mean, if you look at, this is our interesting point. If you look in your bank, you don't say, how dare there be no dollars in my bank? I deserve dollars. Now, why wouldn't you say that? This is the point. Why wouldn't you say that? Why? Where's it come from? Thank you. It's your bank account. So what's in that bank is what you put there. And what's in that bank that isn't there is you didn't put it there. So you own responsibility, don't you? That's the point about karma. So your garden, you don't say, how dare there are weeds in my garden? Who put weeds in my garden? We know we don't say that because we know what's in the garden isn't what I put there. That's the same with karma. It's a very simple analogy. This is our bank account. This is our garden. And what's in this life? What's in my mind, what happens to me, what people do to me, and what the environment is, it's the seeds that I planted. It is not a difficult concept, but it's kind of mind-blowing. It's completely the opposite. There's some aspect of that in Christianity. You sow what you reap. That's true. There's accountability in that way. But there's nothing in the materialist view. There's no view at all in the materialist view about this. There's only blame, only pointing fingers, because there's no recognition of any coherence at all, any law of why bad things happen. We haven't found the answers yet, with respect to us. Are we communicating here? Any questions? Yes. 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 I understand, yes. 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 Exactly. Yes. I understand. I understand. Mm-hmm. I understand. I understand. There's completely separate things. They're 2 separate things. So what there is now, today's garden right now, what's in this garden, called Switzerland, which is your karma, say, as a collection of a group of people, is the fruit of actions like that each of you did individually in the past, that you ripen as the result of the group. I mean, the pedophile next door, right, has the same pure water as you do. So there's explanations for why he's a pedophile, but the one explanation for why both got pure water is at one point in past lives, collectively, you created the cause of not killing that is that causes the result environmentally. The cause of having pure water and good food, enriching food, nourishing food, pure air, good environment is non-killing. So you've all, there's millions of lives, remember. So collectively, you together from countless past lives have, all of you in Zurich have created the similar cause to all be tasting the same pure water. But there might be one kid who goes and buys the same peanuts that you do from a fresh peanut farm who dies of peanut allergy. He's got individual karma of past killing. That the purest peanuts even will kill him. So collective is just a bunch of people doing things individually. That's one thing, explaining what is here now. Now, what you do with what you've got now, that's the karma you will create for the future. Do you understand? So if what you're doing with what you are in Switzerland, what do you mean you're creating a lot of harm? How are you creating a lot of harm in Switzerland?
I don't want to get too political here.
I know, just say it, whatever it is. How do you do a lot of harm? Swiss people.
The way we spend money buying cheap foods that are being produced in very
Okay, there you go. I understand. So then, so we look at that. So that means we look at all the actions we do now, and we can see that collectively our governments and our companies and everything exploit poor people. That's all true. We've got to factor that in. Absolutely we do. It's true. Whether you buy a computer, whether you buy a vegetable, but then we've got to look at the actions we do now and what results they for the future. So because we're so collectively connected, especially globally these days, it's not just a little village. There's much that we have no choice about. So that's why we have to make our choices to be as pure as possible with the purest motivation. And even you could argue, if you go and buy that carrot that came from Brazil because it's cheaper than Swiss carrots, whatever, then at least if you eat the carrot with a pure motivation and try not to harm sentient beings. It's very complex because we can't control the whole universe, but we can, as much as we can, knowing it's so interconnected, do what we can to stop harming others, but knowing we can't make it all perfect. But have a pure motivation and do the best we can with awareness. Surely. What else could you do? That's it, isn't it, really? Another what? No, you can't write. No, that's a different discussion. No, that's a different discussion because if that's the right thing for you to do in your particular life, at your particular place in your spiritual path, to give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll and go live in a nunnery, then you do that. That's perfect. But that's just not a question of because you don't want to eat carrots from Brazil. That's just the right thing for you spiritually.
But it's the same question that it's being in living or not. It's the way we live here. It affects.
Okay, stop saying we. You've got to look at yourself. Because you can't act for Zurich. You can act for yourself.
Every action I take.
Yes.
It has sort of also global.
It does have. There's no question because everything's independent. That's exactly right.
And living in Switzerland is very hard to avoid.
Okay, so where would you live where it doesn't have an effect?
We're in a globalized world. So
That's right. That's exactly right, darling. So that's exactly right. So being aware of it is fantastic. Doing what you can politically, socially, in every way to help change things. But we can't make it all perfect. That's not being passive. But you do what you can with the purest motivation and continue on your path doing what you can to stop killing, stop lying, stop stealing, be conscious and grow yourself in this mess so you can come out of this and become a powerful being to help others. Because whatever environment you're going to be in, whether it's 1,000 years ago or now, is always going to be one thing or another because everything's interdependent. Do you understand? And especially when it comes to the one of killing. We've got so obsessed with eating food, we don't think about all the consequences for all the creatures who die that we don't eat, who die when we kill our food, So there's so many things we can do, but there's so much we can't do. Just to even eat a purest of carrots that was grown in your backyard with no pesticides and no cheap labour. You kill many creatures in the earth. You can't avoid it. So the more conscious we are of this, the more compassion we'll have and the more determination on the basis of that compassion. I must continue working on myself to become a better person so I can help others. You've got to do that. There's no choice, Do you understand? Otherwise, you're just going to stop breathing and die. Do you understand? Yeah, the one of eating food. I think we're so attached to eating. So obsessed with food, I remember we always have this discussion, and I always quote this story on Facebook. Somebody saw a picture of me buying a piece of kick-ass cheddar in a cheese shop in Liverpool about 5 years ago. Kick-ass cheddar. And she was shocked that a Buddhist nun dared to eat cheese, So I didn't want to be political. So I'd always wondered how many creatures die on the road when you just drive cars. So sure enough, Google it, someone's done the homework. So some Dutch fellow has done the research, and I forget all the numbers, but it's just on the number plate. 1 car per kilometre, per this, on one American road, trillions of little creatures smashed to smithereens on the number plate. Real sentient beings like the cow and the chicken. But of course, because if we're the materialist view, we only worry about the cows and the chickens because they look like us, and second, because we eat their flesh. And we're so attached to food, that's too shocking for us. But we don't care about them. So then this same person, well, you mean I shouldn't drive a car? Like as if it doesn't matter. I remember having one conversation with one guy. Oh, but you just can't help that, he said. In other words, they don't care about that. It's very fascinating. You can't avoid, that's a fact. Isn't it? It's a fact. And the other one, this is even more blatant. An Australian scientist in Victoria talked about this particular wheat field, and this must be everywhere, where in the off-season, they're not growing the wheat, millions and millions of these little field mice gather there. And he says they're really cute, and he had photos of them, and they sing love songs to each other. And he thought they were so sweet. And of course, what happens when you have to grow the wheat? 20% for the meat eaters and 80% for the wholly vegans and vegetarians. You slaughter the millions of field mice. But he didn't want to know about that either. Oh, you just can't help that. So as long as you don't eat it, then you're okay, which is really a bit emotional, don't you think? You get my point? So it's bigger than whether you eat a piece of flesh or not, you know? In other words, the point that Buddha is saying, that the nature of this samsara that we live in is in the nature of suffering. Just by existing, we harm. So we've got to find our way out of it with courage, you know, with a pure motivation, doing the best we can. What choice? Do you understand? Oops. What else? What happened? Questions? No more questions? That'll do. Have some lunch then. What are you going to do for lunch? You all brought something? Mostly? Some of you? Huh? Upstairs? Downstairs? In the garden? There's no garden yet. Oh, it's a bit cold for the garden, it's true. You going to make the garden pretty? You've got any gardeners on your list of people? If you had a database, you'd have the jobs they all do. Any gardeners in here? No, you see, none, not one. But you had a database of all your people and put their jobs down. The first thing I say when I meet people is, how come I might have said you started saying, what do you do? What are your skills? And that's how I found my bookkeeper. I've got all these people in my contacts, my iPad, my iMac contacts, right? And when I meet people, I put in what they do. So I had bookkeeper. Then the one person who didn't stop, so I'd look for a bookkeeper. So I searched bookkeeper. And up came Val in Texas. I'd met her once. And I rang her and she became my bookkeeper. So how would I have known if I hadn't written it down? So I put gardener, computer science, doctor, nurse, au pair. Okay, so listen, if you're going to have lunch together, that would be fantastic. Go into little groups, enjoy your lunch, eat your lunch, be happy. Gossip about the weather or the politics, whatever you want. You gossip about in Zurich. But the other one is be really nice. How long are we scheduled? Oh, how long are we scheduled? Oh, I mean, go for 90 minutes. We'll be right, I think. Aim for 90 minutes. And then just little groups or whatever, start pulling apart any one of the pieces we've discussed. And stay focused. Don't just start talking about a book you read last week. We talked about the mind, mostly, the delusion a little bit, and continuity of consciousness and karma, a bit about these two. That's all we've talked about. So just discuss these, unpack them, yeah? And you can be silent if you want to. If you don't want to do it, I can't force you. But the two options are silence or talk about this stuff, okay? And I'm going to go home to my house around the corner and feel sorry for myself. I've had all these. I have a vague memory, like a dream, of walking from the car. Isn't that amazing? I was so excited. I could easily get addicted to them, I tell you. So then they gave me cortisone to calm the pain down, so it was a bit painful. See, it's all swollen. It's arthritic business. So I'll go and feel sorry for myself. I can't type. I just type with one hand. What else? What else I've got? Sorry. That's enough. That's enough to feel sorry for. Okay, you people. Have a lovely time back. We'll aim for 2:30. See how it goes. Okay? Thank you, everybody. Happy to be here. So happy to be here.